Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of Eating on a Budget. I hate to beat a dead horse to death, but I have to keep repeating it for new viewers who may not be familiar with the type of budget meals that I'm making. So if you are new to the channel, welcome aboard and hit that subscribe button. I hate to call these budget meals struggle meals, but you gotta say it like it is. People are struggling to feed themselves and or their family every day. So my purpose with these videos is to ensure that everyone can feed themselves and or their family at least one meal a day. So with that said, the serving sizes aren't going to be huge, but you're going to survive a whole lot longer with a little bit of something in your stomach than nothing in your stomach. The ironic thing about today's so-called struggle meal is that regardless of your income, everyone eats this, or at least they have once or twice in their lifetime. If they haven't, they've been living under a big rock. And it starts with a very inexpensive, delicious, and nutritious ingredient: dried beans. Beans in general are not only nutritious and delicious, they're also very entertaining. So it's a 2-for-1 on this meal. You get dinner and a concert. Besides being nutritious, delicious, and inexpensive, beans more than double their size after you cook them. So if you start off with a 1-pound bag of dried beans, that's 2 cups of beans. But once you soak those beans, you end up with 6 cups of beans. And a 1-pound bag of dried beans costs right around $1. So right there alone, for right around $1, you have food to feed your family. If you happen to have leftover vegetables or meat, you could also add them to the beans. You can buy some other ingredients to really kick up the beans. And the ingredients aren't specific. You can add whatever you like into your beans. And that's what we're doing today. We're just going to make a hearty pot of very inexpensive bean soup that will feed a ton of people. In a few previous videos, I had some knuckleheads tell me that I was lying about the price of these meals. So this list is for you, the knuckleheads. Don't ever question my integrity. So if you're really struggling, this recipe today can make 24 half-cup servings for 34 cents a serving. And I already know there's someone out there that's going to say, who's going to get full off a half a cup of beans? For you to even ask that question, you've never really struggled. These recipes aren't meant to make you full. They're meant to help you survive for as little money as possible. So I'm going to start by pouring a 2-pound bag of dried northern beans into a pot. And then we'll pick through them for rocks or any other debris that shouldn't be in there. And then we'll take them over to the sink and rinse them off. And then put them back on the stove and fill the pot with water, at least 2 times as much water as you have beans. Once these beans have soaked, I'm probably going to have to switch to a bigger pot, but we're going to wait and see. Now give them a good mix and turn the heat up on high and bring the beans up to a simmer. Once everything's come up to a heavy simmer, give it a mix, turn the heat off, put the lid on the pot, and let it sit for about 2 hours. You can let the beans soak for less time or more time. This is just the way I normally do it. You can also just put them in a pot of water overnight. But technically, you don't even have to soak the beans. You can put them in a pot with sufficient liquid and start cooking from there. Here's what our beans look like after sitting for 2 hours. And you can tell they've soaked up pretty much most of the water and more than doubled in size, which leaves me no room to add the other ingredients. So we'll have to switch over to a bigger pot, which brings up the other great debate. Do you save the water that the beans soaked in, or do you dump it out and add new water? Some people say if you drain the water and add new water, it will reduce the gas you get from the beans. And my reply to that statement would be why? Why on earth would you want to reduce the gas in the beans? You're taking half the fun out of eating the beans. I never dump it out. I leave it in and add more water as necessary. There's flavor in that water, especially if you don't have enough money to buy meat. So once the beans are soaked and we transferred them to a bigger pot, we added a couple teaspoons of fresh, homegrown minced garlic, straight out of the jar. If you don't have fresh garlic, use granulated garlic. And then add some carrots, sliced or diced, and then some chopped onion, chopped celery, and a few bay leaves. If you have them. If you don't, it's not a big deal. Now give it all a good mix. If you noticed, I haven't really added any seasonings yet. Which brings up another debate, is whether salt will toughen your beans or not. In my experience, adding salt before the beans are finished cooking, it does toughen up the beans. You may disagree. That's just in my experience. But feel free to add whatever seasonings you like in your beans. Just in my opinion, I'd hold off until later to add any salt. Once everything's mixed together and happy, add any kind of smoked meat or regular meat you like. My first choice of meat to use in a pot of beans is always going to be smoked pork ham hocks. They have the most meat, the most fat, which equals flavor, and the most smokiness. But evidently, there's a shortage of smoked ham hocks in my area, because I couldn't even find any for Thanksgiving. So I opted for smoked turkey legs, for Thanksgiving collard greens, and for today's pot of beans. But you can use any kind of smoked meat or bones, or unsmoked meat or bones. You could also use leftover meat if you like. Or if you don't have any meat available or money to buy meat, hopefully you save your bacon grease, and you can put a tablespoon or two of the bacon grease in with the beans. But there's one more option you can do that doesn't cost anything. If you're invited over to your family's or friend's house for Christmas or New Year's dinner and they're serving ham, ask them if you can take the leftover ham bone home with you. You might just get lucky and they don't realize that a ham bone is gold when it comes to making bean soup. Once your turkey legs are in place, add enough water to cover everything. Stop it, I already know what you're gonna say. It would taste a whole lot better if you added some chicken broth or chicken stock to it instead of water. Well, this video is not about you, broth, or stock. Some people may not have that extra dollar or two to get the broth, the stock, or the bouillon. And to be quite frank, in this recipe, broth or stock isn't necessary even if you could afford it. Those 2 turkey legs will provide more than enough flavor mixed with the water and the beans and the vegetables. Now, if you're not able to add any meat in with the beans for any reason, then that would be a perfect time to use broth or stock instead of water to add some flavor. And that is if you have broth or stock. So put the lid on the pot, bring it up to a simmer, reduce the heat to medium-low, and we'll check back in about an hour or so. And here's what our beans and turkey legs look like after the first hour. So just move everything around just a little bit and check your water levels too. Depending on how much water you added to begin with, you may need to add more water. Now put the lid back on and let the beans continue to cook for another hour. Here's what our pot of beans looks like after simmering for 2 hours now. Now it looks like we're right at the beginning stage of everything starting to break down. So give it another mix, put the lid back on, and let it go for another 45 minutes to an hour. And here's our beans at the 3-hour mark. And they're about 90% done. Give everything a good mix, and then remove the turkey legs from the pot. And then remove all the meat from the bones. And then once you've gotten all the turkey meat off the bones, add it back in with the beans. And you'll notice Mrs. Wolfe is picking out some of the pieces of cartilage that look like little bones. You really want to be careful of those because they're real easy to miss, and they're a choking hazard, especially if you have little kids. So try a couple of the beans to ensure they're tender. And then once they're tender, you can add some salt and other seasonings that you like. And I'm just sticking with the basics and using some Lowry's seasoning salt. Use whatever seasonings you have to spice it up to your liking. Once you season your bean soup the way you like it, give it a mix, and it's ready to eat. But I like mine a little bit thicker than this, so I'm gonna let it cook for another 30 minutes without the lid on. After simmering for the final 30 minutes, our soup is thickened up nicely, and now it's how I like it. Now grab a ladle and let's get some in a bowl. And there you have it, a very hearty bowl of navy bean soup with smoked turkey legs and vegetables. Enjoy this with a couple slices of bread, or cornbread would be even better if you're able to. Now in the beginning of the video, I said you could make 24 half-cup servings for 34 cents each for a total of $8.04. Now that would have to be done under really, really hard, harsh times. I'm not a doctor, but I think you could survive off a half a cup of this per meal per day. But like I said, that would have to be under unusually hard times. So if you double the portion size to 12 1-cup servings for 67 cents a serving, I think that's more realistic. But then if you triple the serving size to 6 1.5-cup servings for $1 a serving, I think that's the most realistic size serving. The bottom line is, this hearty, stick to your ribs, nutritious, delicious, and inexpensive meal only costs $8.04, no matter the serving size. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.